Have you ever noticed how some people subtly change their behavior when they are not being completely honest? In communication between couples, these signs become even more evident. Throughout years of studying behavioral patterns, I have discovered that there are specific indicators that can reveal when someone is hiding the truth. I will show you exactly how to identify these signals so that you are never deceived in your relationships again. Nonverbal communication reveals much more than words can express. Behavioral scientists claim that approximately 93% of human communication occurs beyond the words spoken. When someone is not being entirely sincere, their body begins to emit involuntary signals that betray their true intentions. Gestures and body language act as an extremely powerful silent language. Imagine someone constantly averting their gaze during a serious conversation. This behavior is not random, but a potential sign that something is not being entirely revealed. Research in the field of communication indicates that avoiding eye contact may signify discomfort or an attempt to conceal information. Physical restlessness also serves as an emotional thermometer. Repetitive movements, such as fidgeting with hands, frequently adjusting clothing, or bouncing legs, can indicate internal nervousness. These signals are involuntary and reveal an emotional state that contradicts the verbal discourse. Scholars like Paul Ekman, a world-renowned authority on nonverbal communication, have developed methodologies for identifying microexpressions. These are rapid facial reactions that occur in milliseconds, almost imperceptibly. A forced smile, a quick eye movement, or a subtle muscle contraction can reveal hidden emotions. Body posture also communicates a great deal. A completely honest person tends to maintain a more relaxed and natural position, while someone trying to hide something displays muscular rigidity and more controlled movements. Physical tension acts as a silent alarm that alerts us to potential inconsistencies in the discourse. It is vital to understand that these signals should not be interpreted in isolation. Context, individual personality, and environment are crucial elements for accurate analysis. Transforming this observation into a communication tool requires sensitivity and knowledge. The practice of identifying these signals does not mean judging, but rather gaining a better understanding of the dynamics of human communication. Developing this skill leads to more transparent and honest relationships, creating deeper and more genuine connections with the people around us. An abundance of details can be a fascinating indicator when we are trying to identify potential lies. Psychologically, when a person is not being completely sincere, they tend to add unnecessary information as a defense strategy. It's as if the brain creates a verbal smokescreen to divert attention from the central truth. Imagine a situation where someone is questioned about a simple event. An honest answer would be direct and objective. On the other hand, a person lying often gets lost in endless descriptions, creating complex narratives with excessive details that serve only to confuse and validate their fabricated version. Experts in behavioral analysis highlight that when the brain attempts to construct a false story, it requires more cognitive effort. This effort translates into an almost compulsive need to justify every detail, as if each additional word could make the lie more believable. Behavioral scientists call this phenomenon information overload. The more a person tries to convince, the more irrelevant elements are added to the discourse. It is a defense mechanism where excessive explanations function as an attempt to appear transparent, but in reality highlight the opposite. This does not mean that every person who provides many details is lying. There are naturally more descriptive individuals. The key is to identify the discordant pattern of the person's usual behavior, observing whether this verbosity arises in specific moments of tension or questioning. The art of noticing these communicational nuances requires active listening and careful observation. It is not about judging, but understanding the subtle mechanisms of human communication. Each unnecessary detail can be a valuable indicator for understanding what is truly being communicated. Developing this sensitivity allows us to navigate our social interactions with more confidence, creating spaces of greater honesty and transparency. Authentic communication begins when we can look beyond the words and perceive the true meanings behind them. Anxiety during explanations can reveal much more than we imagine. When a person is not entirely sincere, their internal emotional state tends to manifest in subtle and involuntary ways. The way someone articulates their words, the rhythm of their speech, and the energy conveyed can be true indicators of their mental state. Imagine a situation where someone is trying to justify something that does not entirely match the truth. Their voice starts to tremble slightly, the words come out faster or slower than usual, and an almost imperceptible restlessness arises. These signals are not mere coincidences, but physiological responses of our organism when under pressure. Neurologically, when we lie, our sympathetic nervous system goes into alert mode. Cortisol production increases, generating a rush of adrenaline that puts us in communication survival mode. It's as if our body tries to devise a defense strategy through unconscious mechanisms. Behavioral researchers find that anxiety manifests through subtle variations in communication. The tone may oscillate between high and low, revealing an internal discomfort. Strategic pauses, unnecessary repetitions of words, and an almost compulsive need to explain are clear symptoms of this emotional state. This does not mean that every instance of anxiety indicates a direct lie. There are multiple contexts that can generate nervousness. An important presentation, a delicate conversation, or simply a moment of social pressure. The key is to understand the specific behavioral pattern of the person and the circumstances involved. Professionals specializing in nonverbal communication highlight that speech fluency is a powerful indicator. When we are being completely transparent, our narrative flows naturally. In contrast, when we try to construct a non-authentic story, hesitations, subtle stuttering, and artificiality in communication emerge. The ability to identify these signals does not represent a judgment, but a skill for a deeper understanding of human dynamics. Developing this sensitivity allows us to navigate with greater emotional intelligence in our interactions, creating spaces of greater trust and genuine connection. Observing these details requires practice, sensitivity, and a non-invasive gaze. It is not about unmasking someone, but understanding the complex mechanisms of human communication, where every gesture, every pause in speech can reveal fascinating internal worlds. Eye contact is a fascinating communicational tool that reveals much more than we imagine. When we think of sincerity, our eye interactions function as true emotional thermometers. A completely honest person tends to maintain a natural, fluid, and direct gaze without tension or artificiality. Behavioral anthropologists emphasize that eye contact does not have a universal interpretation. In different cultures, the way people look varies significantly. Some societies view direct eye contact as a sign of respect, while others interpret it as a challenge or aggression. This cultural variability teaches us to be cautious when interpreting nonverbal signals. Scientists specialized in human communication identify interesting nuances in eye behavior. Constantly averting one's gaze may signal discomfort, insecurity, or an attempt to conceal information. However, we cannot turn this observation into an absolute rule. There are naturally shy individuals or those on the neurodiversity spectrum who exhibit different patterns of eye contact. The gaze also functions as a powerful emotional connection tool. When someone maintains consistent eye contact during a serious conversation, it demonstrates confidence and commitment to the dialogue. On the contrary, broken or erratic eye contact may indicate that the person is processing internal information or constructing a narrative that does not completely align with the truth. Neurologically, our eyes are extensions of the brain, carrying instant emotional information. Sustained eye contact releases oxytocin, a hormone associated with trust and intimacy. When this contact is abruptly interrupted, our limbic system detects potential communicational incongruency. It is important to emphasize that analyzing eye contact must be contextualized. A professional in an interview situation may exhibit different eye behavior than a friend sharing a personal story. The key lies in integrated observation, considering personality, environment, and relational dynamics. Developing sensitivity to these communicational subtleties does not mean turning every interaction into an investigation. Rather, it represents enhancing our emotional intelligence, creating spaces of deeper and more authentic understanding in human relationships. The gaze communicates, reveals, connects. We just need to know how to interpret its infinite nuances. Variations in vocal tone represent a fascinating universe of nonverbal communication. Our nervous system reveals subtle secrets through tonal variations that may go unnoticed by inattentive ears. When faced with a situation that requires discretion or partial concealment of the truth, our voice involuntarily transforms. Neurologically, the brain sends alert signals that modify our vocal frequency. Internal tension translates into slight oscillations that may seem imperceptible, but are loaded with meaning. A slightly higher pitch, a faster cadence, or strategic pauses can reveal entire emotional universes. Imagine a conversation where the person needs to justify something. Their voice begins to tremble subtly, words gain different speeds, and an energy of discomfort arises that is almost imperceptible. These elements are not mere communicational accidents, but complex physiological responses of our body when we experience internal pressure. Experts in nonverbal communication identify that the repetition of certain words also acts as a validation mechanism. When someone excessively insists on specific expressions, they are, in fact, trying to convince themselves of their own narrative. It's as if each repetition functions as a defensive shield against possible questions. The need for external validation manifests through specific vocal modulations. A defensive tone, slightly higher or lower than usual, may indicate that the person is navigating murky emotional waters. Vocal energy conveys much more than the spoken words. Neurologically, when we lie or omit information, our sympathetic nervous system goes into alert mode. Cortisol production increases, generating a rush of adrenaline that puts us into communicational survival mode. Our voice then becomes a revealing instrument of complex internal states. It is crucial to understand that these nuances do not represent judgment, but rather possibilities for behavioral reading. Human communication is a rich and multifaceted territory, where each vocal modulation can hide complete emotional universes. Developing sensitivity to these subtleties represents an exercise in deep relational intelligence. The key lies in careful observation, without prejudice, considering the total context of communication. Every vocal variation tells a story, reveals an emotion, signals an internal state. We just need to learn to listen beyond the words, understanding the silent territories that inhabit our communication. Micro-expressions are true windows into our internal emotional world. They are instantaneous facial reactions, lasting mere milliseconds, that reveal our deepest and most authentic emotional states. Imagine a conversation where someone is trying to hide something. Even if their face maintains an apparently neutral expression, micro-expressions can betray hidden thoughts. These brief expressions arise before our brain can fully control our emotional response. A forced smile, a quick eye movement, a subtle muscle contraction are signs that may go unnoticed by inattentive observers, but are true emotional codes for those who know how to interpret them. Behavioral scientists like Paul Ekman have spent decades studying these phenomena. They have discovered that our face functions as an extremely sophisticated emotional map. Each facial muscle can reveal emotions such as fear, surprise, anger, or sadness, even when we try to mask indifference. Nervous gestures complement this universe of nonverbal communication. Small movements, such as rubbing hands, constantly adjusting clothing, or fiddling with nearby objects, can signal internal discomfort. These are bodily signals that our nervous system produces involuntarily when we experience tension. It is important to understand that these manifestations do not represent absolute truths, but interpretative possibilities. Culture, individual. Personality and social context directly influence how these micro-expressions manifest. The same expression may have completely different meanings depending on the environment and the established relationships. Neurologically, these reactions are processed by the limbic system, responsible for our most primitive emotional responses. Even before we can rationalize a situation, our body is already producing subtle signs that communicate our internal state. It's as if we have a permanently active emotional alert system. Developing sensitivity to notice micro-expressions represents an exercise in deep relational intelligence. It means looking beyond words, understanding the emotional universes that inhabit each gesture, each facial movement, every imperceptible muscle tremor. Human communication is a rich and complex territory where every millisecond can reveal entire worlds of meaning. We just need to learn to observe with care, empathy, and genuine curiosity about the subtle mechanisms that connect us as emotional beings. Analyzing context and consistency in responses represents a fundamental strategy for truly understanding human communication. When we seek to identify potential inconsistencies, we are not simply looking for lies, but trying to understand the deeper layers of communicational interaction. Each person carries a unique story, a behavioral history that serves as a reference for their future interactions. Understanding this background means looking beyond immediate words, delving into the complexity of individual experiences that shape our way of communicating. Imagine a situation where someone tells a story. An attentive observer not only listens to the current content, but mentally compares it with previous narratives, identifying possible subtle divergences. These little inconsistencies can reveal a lot about the authenticity of the communication. The expectations created by context are crucial elements in this analysis. The environment, the relationship between interlocutors, the emotional moment, and specific circumstances directly influence how a story is constructed and presented. A response that seems strange in one scenario may be completely natural in another. Experts in nonverbal communication highlight that narrative coherence does not mean absolute rigidity. Human beings are dynamic, and our memories and perceptions constantly transform. The important thing is to identify significant patterns of inconsistency, not small natural variations. Techniques for assessing consistency involve active, non-invasive listening. It means observing the flow of the narrative, identifying tension points, comparing current information with prior knowledge, always maintaining a posture of understanding and empathy. Neurologically, our brain acts as a sophisticated verification system. We constantly process new information, comparing it with our internal records. When something genuinely sounds inconsistent, our emotional alert systems are subtly activated. The art of noticing these communicational nuances requires practice, sensitivity, and a mindset free of hasty judgments. It is not about unearthing lies, but understanding the complex mechanisms that constitute our human communication, where each word carries universes of meaning. Developing this skill allows us to navigate with greater relational intelligence, creating spaces of deeper understanding and authentic connection. Each interaction then becomes an opportunity for learning, where the truth is not a goal to be achieved, but a territory to be explored with respect and curiosity. We have now reached the crucial moment of synthesis, where we transform all shared information into practical tools for our communication. The revealed strategies do not represent a manual for unmasking lies, but an invitation to deeply understand human dynamics. Each signal, each communicational nuance needs to be observed with sensitivity, respect, and emotional intelligence. The goal is to create more authentic connections, fostering dialogues where transparency is the main foundation. We invite you to practice these skills, observing subtleties, developing active listening, and building relationships based on mutual trust.